Speechless, when to be quiet in Islam. Silence, it's more powerful than we think. In a world where everyone fights to be heard, where opinions flood every conversation, and where words are thrown like arrows, silence is often overlooked. But in Islam, silence is not just the absence of speech. It is wisdom, it is restraint, it is protection. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, once said, "Whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him speak good or remain silent." Hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. This is not a suggestion, it is a command, a guidepost for every conversation we engage in. There are moments when silence carries more weight than words ever could, when speech can ignite flames of conflict, yet silence can extinguish them. When silence is not weakness, but strength. The Quran itself warns about the power of our words. Not a word does he utter, but there is a watcher by him, ready to record it. From Surah Kahf 50-18. Every sentence we speak is written, every insult, every lie, every careless remark, it all remains. Yet, in this age of social media debates and endless discussions, have we forgotten this? Have we forgotten the power of restraint? But silence is not just about avoiding harm, it is a sign of wisdom. The greatest scholars of Islam often spoke less and listened more. They understood that silence could be a weapon, a shield, a means to earn Allah's mercy. So, when should we stay silent? When is speech a blessing, and when is it a curse? In this video, we will explore the wisdom of silence in Islam, its rewards, its dangers, and its role in our journey toward righteousness. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might change the way you speak forever. Chapter 1. The Power of Silence in Islam. Silence is not just an absence of speech, it is an active force of wisdom and self-discipline. Islam teaches that silence is not simply about remaining quiet, but about knowing when to speak and when to withhold words. In a time when speaking has never been easier, through social media, instant messaging, and endless conversations, understanding the power of silence has never been more important. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a man of few but impactful words. He did not engage in unnecessary talk, nor did he waste his speech on idle chatter. He spoke with intention, purpose, and wisdom. His silence was not emptiness, it was reflection and self-control. He once said, "Whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him speak good or remain silent." Hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. This command is a clear guiding principle for life. If our words do not bring good, then they are better left unspoken. But how often do we remember this before we speak? The Quran warns us about the weight of our words. Not a word does he utter, but there is a watcher by him, ready to record it. From Surah Kahf 50-18. Every single word, every criticism, every insult, every careless joke is written and preserved. We will face those words again on the day of judgment. Have we spoken with kindness and wisdom, or have we used our words to harm, mock, or spread falsehood? The consequences of reckless speech are severe. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, warned, "A man may utter a word thoughtlessly, and it may result in his downfall into the fire, farther than the distance between the east and the west." Hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. Think about that. A single careless word could be the difference between salvation and destruction. Words shape our relationships, our reputation, and even our destiny. This is why the great scholars of Islam spoke less and listened more. They understood that silence was not a lack of knowledge, but proof of wisdom. Imam Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, once said, "Silence is the best reply to a fool." How many times have we engaged in pointless arguments, defending ourselves against insults, trying to prove a point to someone who refuses to listen? The Quran teaches us, and when they hear ill speech, they turn away from it and say, "For us are our deeds, and for you are your deeds. Peace be upon you, we seek not the ignorant." From Surah Al-Qasas 28-55. The believer is not one who seeks conflict, but one who walks away from it when there is no benefit. However, this raises an important question: does silence always mean wisdom? Are there times when being silent is a sin rather than a virtue? In Chapter 2, we will explore the moments when staying quiet is a betrayal, when speech is an obligation, and when speaking out is a duty in Islam. Chapter 2. When silence becomes wrong. Silence is a virtue, but only when it is used in the right way. Islam does not teach us to be silent at all times. In fact, there are moments when staying quiet is not an act of wisdom, but an act of betrayal. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, warned against remaining silent in the face of injustice. He taught that there are times when speaking out is an obligation, even if it comes with risk. He said, "The best form of jihad is to speak a word of truth in front of a tyrannical ruler." Hadith from Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi. Truth has power, but that power is lost when fear silences us. How often have we seen oppression and wrongdoing, yet remained silent out of fear or hesitation? The Quran warns us against this. "And do not conceal testimony, for whoever conceals this heart is indeed sinful." From Surah Al-Baqarah 2-283. Silence, when used to hide the truth, becomes a sin. When someone is wronged, when injustice spreads, when lies take root, it is indeed our duty to speak. To say nothing is to allow evil to flourish. But injustice is not the only time when silence is wrong. Remaining silent when knowledge is needed is equally dangerous. Imagine someone asking for guidance about faith, about morality, about what is right. If we know the truth but choose to stay silent, are we not denying them the chance to grow? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Convey from me, even if it is a single verse." Hadith from Bukhari. Islam was never meant to be kept hidden. It is a message to be shared, a light to be spread. A single verse, a single word of guidance can change someone's life, but only if we choose to speak. Yet, there is another form of silence that Islam condemns. Silence when defending the honor of others. Gossip, slander, and backbiting are among the most dangerous sins. The Quran describes them in the harshest of terms. "And do not backbite each other. Would any of you like to eat the flesh of his dead brother? You would detest it." From Surah Al-Hujurat 49-12. When we hear falsehood spoken about someone, we have two choices: stay silent and allow it to spread. Speak up and stop it. Too often, we choose silence. We pretend not to hear. We ignore the damage being done, and we walk away when truth needs a defender. But Islam teaches the opposite. We must protect the dignity of others as we would protect our own. So, when should we break our silence? When truth is at risk, when injustice prevails, when knowledge is needed, when someone's honor is in danger. Islam does not call for constant speech, but it demands courageous speech when necessary. But how do we find the balance? How do we know when to stay silent and when to speak? This is the heart of Chapter 3. Because wisdom lies not in extremes, but in knowing when to act. Chapter 3. Finding the balance between speech and silence. In Islam, wisdom is not found in absolute silence or constant speech. Instead, it lies in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. This balance is what separates the wise from the reckless, the guided from the misguided. Allah has given us the ability to speak, but He has also given us the responsibility to control our speech. Every word we utter is either a step toward Jannah or a step toward destruction. This is why mastering the balance between silence and speech is one of the greatest signs of wisdom. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "A person's faith will not be upright until his heart is upright, and his heart will not be upright until his tongue is upright." Hadith from Ahmad. Our tongues reflect the state of our hearts. A pure heart speaks with kindness, truth, and sincerity. A corrupt heart produces gossip, lies, and harm. The way we control our speech is a direct sign of our faith. But how do we know when to speak and when to stay silent? Islam gives us clear guidance on this. 1. Speak when your words bring benefit. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, set the standard. Whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him speak good or remain silent. Hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. Before speaking, ask yourself, will my words bring good? Will they help, guide, or inspire? If the answer is yes, then speak. If not, silence is the better choice. 2. Stay silent when words lead to harm. Anger, gossip, backbiting. How many conflicts start because someone spoke without thinking? The Quran warns, "And do not pursue that of which you have no knowledge. Indeed, the hearing, the sight, and the heart, about all those one will be questioned." From Surah Al-Isra 17:36. Speaking without knowledge is dangerous. Islam teaches that it is better to remain silent than to speak in ignorance. 3. Speak when truth needs a voice. While silence is often wisdom, there are times when silence is a mistake. When truth is hidden, when justice is at risk, when someone is being wronged, we must speak out. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Whoever among you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. If he cannot, then with his tongue. If he cannot, then with his heart, and that is the weakest of faith." Hadith from Muslim. This hadith shows that remaining silent in the face of injustice is not an option. We must use our words to defend the truth. 4. Stay silent in the face of provocation. Not every battle is worth fighting. Sometimes silence is stronger than words. The Quran gives clear guidance on how a believer should respond to insults and ignorance. And when they hear ill speech, they turn away from it and say, "For us are our deeds, and for you are your deeds. Peace be upon you, we seek not the ignorant." From Surah Al-Qasas 28-55. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. The believer walks away from useless arguments and protects their dignity through silence. The key to balance. Thinking before speaking. To master the balance between speech and silence, we must develop self-awareness. Before speaking, pause and reflect. Is this true? Is this beneficial? Is this necessary? If the answer is no, then silence is the better path. If the answer is yes, then our words must be spoken with wisdom and sincerity. This is the art of balancing silence and speech. Islam teaches us that both are powerful tools when used correctly. But what happens when we fail to control our words? In Chapter 4, we will explore how our words can either elevate us or lead to our downfall, both in this world and the hereafter. Chapter 4. The consequences of speech and silence. Every word we speak carries weight. Every silence we choose holds meaning. In Islam, our speech and our silence shape our destiny, not just in this world, but in the hereafter. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, warned us about the danger of careless words. A man may utter a word thoughtlessly, and it may result in his downfall into the fire farther than the distance between the east and the west. Hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. Imagine that just one word could lead to destruction. A moment of anger, a careless insult, a false accusation, it all adds up. And yet, how often do we speak without thinking? The Quran reminds us, not a word does he utter, but there is a watcher by him ready to record it. From Surah Kahf 50-18. Every sentence we speak is written. Every insult, every lie, every moment of gossip, it will all be presented to us on the Day of Judgment. The tongue, though small, has the power to build or destroy, to elevate or humiliate, to bring us closer to Allah or further away from Him. But what about silence? Is it always the safer choice? Not necessarily. When silence becomes a sin, there are times when staying silent is just as dangerous as speaking recklessly. The Quran warns us, and do not conceal testimony, for whoever conceals his heart is indeed sinful. From Surah Al-Baqarah 2-283. If we witness injustice and remain silent, we become complicit in that injustice. If we hide the truth when people need guidance, we fail our duty as Muslims. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "When people see a wrong and do not change it, Allah may send His punishment upon them all." Hadith from Abu Dawood. Silence in the face of falsehood is not wisdom, it is cowardice. This is why Islam commands us to speak for justice, even if it is against ourselves. The reward of righteous speech and wise silence. Just as the tongue can lead to ruin, it can also be a source of immense reward. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Whoever guarantees me what is between his jaws, his tongue, and what is between his legs, his chastity, I will guarantee him paradise." Hadith from Bukhari. Guarding our tongue, speaking only truth and remaining silent when necessary, is a direct path to Jannah. And for those who use their words for good, who remind others of Allah, who stop harm with their voices, who spread wisdom, the reward is even greater. The Quran describes them beautifully. Who is better in speech than one who invites to Allah, does righteous deeds, and says, "Indeed, I am of the Muslims." From Surah Fussilat 41-33. Speech can be a weapon or a shield. Silence can be an escape or a fortress. The difference lies in how we use them. The final reflection. So, what have we learned? Every word matters. Even what we consider small is recorded. Silence can be wisdom, but it can also be weakness. Know when to speak and when to hold back. Our tongues can lead us to Jannah or Jahannam. The choice is ours. In the end, the believer understands one thing. Speech is a trust, and silence is a responsibility. May Allah guide us to use both wisely. With this, we conclude our journey through the wisdom of silence and speech in Islam. But the real test begins now. How will you choose to use your words from this moment forward? What have we learned? Silence and speech, two forces that shape our lives, define our character, and determine our fate in the hereafter. Islam does not command us to be mute, nor does it encourage reckless speech. Instead, it teaches us the wisdom of balance. We have learned that silence is a shield, a means of protecting ourselves from sin, anger, and unnecessary conflict. Speech is a trust. Every word we say is recorded, and we will be held accountable for it. Staying silent is sometimes wisdom, especially when faced with ignorance, anger, or meaningless debates. But silence can also be dangerous when injustice is committed, when truth needs a voice, or when falsehood spreads. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave us a simple but powerful rule to follow. Whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him speak good or remain silent. Hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. If every Muslim lived by this hadith, how different would our conversations be? How many arguments would be avoided? How many sins would be left unspoken? The question now is, how will you apply this lesson to your life? Will you think before you speak? Will you stay silent when words bring harm? Will you have the courage to speak when truth is needed? The choice is yours. Thank you for watching. Jazakum Allahu Khairan for joining this journey through the wisdom of silence and speech in Islam. I hope these lessons have given you a new perspective on the power of words and the value of silence. If you found this video beneficial, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to support more content like this. And most importantly, let's continue this conversation in the comments. When was a time you stayed silent and regretted it? Or a time when you spoke and made a difference? Share your thoughts below. Until next time, may Allah grant us the wisdom to speak with truth, remain silent with patience, and use our words to earn His pleasure. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.